Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Investor Lab. My name is Goose, and this is a surprising episode. I must say I was a little surprised, pleasantly surprised. In this episode, I enjoyed a scintillating conversation with a real estate sales agent, real estate leader, and entrepreneur and investor and developer, Darin from Wiseberry Heritage, which is a real estate agency on the central coast of New South Wales in Australia. Now, we had no idea where this conversation was going to go. I started out by poking the bear and talking about the fact that people don't even like sales agents and why the hell anyone would even want to do that. But that conversation very quickly progressed into talking about stuff like how to practice high performance leadership, how to be more effective in your actions, how to play the long game in real estate through multiple cycles, how to optimize your opportunity and encourage lady luck through action, I'm just checking my notes. We covered a 25-year goal plans and how effective they are in progressing your personal journey, the importance of mentors, guides, and coaches to any high performance success plan, and so much more. I think that you are going to be as impressed, as enthralled, and as inspired as I was out of this. The expectation I had going into this conversation was that we were going to be talking pretty dryly around real estate sales and local market conditions. But what happened was something that was genuinely enjoyable and supremely impactful. And I know that you're going to get a lot out of this. Now, as ever, if you do enjoy this, then please like, share, rate, review, do all of that kind of stuff. If you're listening to this and this is not your first episode, then you've probably established that this is good value content. And I know it is, and you know it is. We all know it is. So share it with someone. Help somebody else out. Don't keep all the goodness to yourself. And it might seem like a trivial pursuit to you, but subscriptions, likes, shares, comments, ratings, and reviews, they all mean a hell of a lot to us here at the Investor Lab. So please take some time to give back, because we love you and we give to you too. Now, if you want to pursue this a little further and take this out of your ears and into your life, then head to theinvestorlab.com.au to find out the many ways that we can support you in your personal wealth and property journey. Enjoy and let me know what you think. See you on the inside. Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Investor Lab. I'm your host, Goose, and joining me today is Darin from Wiseberry Heritage in Charmhaven. How are you today?
Yeah, fantastic, mate. How are you going?
Mate, pretty good actually. Pretty good. Thanks for joining me. It's early on a Wednesday morning at the time of recording, so I appreciate you taking some time out of your morning to jump on and have a little chat.
No problems at all, mate.
Now, we're going to cover a few different things today. As always, these conversations, we will just see where they go. I'm interested in having a little chat with you, and part of the reason I wanted to get you on to have a conversation is because you sit on the other side of the fence to me. Now, what I mean by that is I'm a buyer's agent and you're a selling agent. So I want to dig into that, what the differences are, and also how, we're going to cover a lot of ground. But I really want to just tackle something early on in this conversation. Now, when I made a career shift, you're going to have to just indulge me for a moment while I ramble on in a bit of a soliloquy to get things rolling. But when I first decided that I wanted to pursue a passion that I had with property and decided I wanted to become a buyer's agent, I was met largely by a lot of scorn and disdain, because a lot of people thought, oh, why are you going into real estate? You're going to start selling houses. And it must be said, and I'm sure you've probably experienced this a little bit, that I guess real estate sales people don't necessarily have the greatest reputation. Now, I'm not saying that this is you, but I mean, this is the feedback that I got from my friends and family. They were like, oh, almost like I was, going into a very undesirable industry. And I was like, hang on, I was just going out there to help people. What's going on here? Yep. So, Nate, my first question to you is, what the hell inspired you to want to become a real estate sales agent?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I got asked at school, actually, when I was younger, what's the one job you don't want to do? My father was in real estate, and I said, real estate, there's no way I want to do those stupid hours that they do. Hence, a lot of years down the line now, and that's what I'm doing. But I went actually into uni to do computer science. And after a year of sitting with people with pocket calculators, and there's nothing wrong with that, it just wasn't me. I wanted to be with people in the connection. So I left. I didn't find any jobs. So my old man got me a job as a window glazer. I quickly realised that I was accident prone, so that went. Got into in the rag trade and Reuben of Scarf, and they were a fantastic company, and they taught me so much so quick. It was ridiculous. I was always getting offered jobs. Ended up getting offered a job in real estate against my father as competition, and I thought, yeah, there's nothing nicer than that. He's 30 years of experience and I'm none, so I'll take him on for sure. And that's where it blossomed. A couple of years after that, we started a real estate company called Heritage, and then moved into Wiseberry Heritage later on down the line.
Okay, so that tells me the pathway that you took, but that doesn't explain why. Because you basically said, so you went and studied computer science, realized that wasn't for you because you liked people more than you liked computers. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Cool. And then you became a pain in your boss's behind because when you were doing a window glazing job because you're accident prone. That's cool. Got that.
Yep.
And then what? Like, what
was the catalyst?
What was the catalyst? Like, why property? And what friction did you need to overcome to want to pursue that as a career? What turned it in from, and also what turned it from a job that you were filling as a role as a young man that you were just like, just give me some cash?
Yep.
And where did that transition from just being, give me some cash, I'm a young man, I want money, to wanting to be some way that you spend your existence?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I think the first thing was that I wanted to work longer hours than what actually you could in a shopping centre and in the clothing trade. And I used to get really fed up that you could only, on a Thursday or Friday, you could work a 12-hour shift depending on which store you went to. But other than that, you could only work a certain time period. And it was limiting where we could help people. So my real drive was not about money, even though it seems like the catalyst of my life. It's just a vehicle to get me from A to B. And so I looked at how I could help people more, how I could actually get the fun of the sale. And I had a mental belief when I walked into real estate that people don't walk to real estate agents because they like them. They actually don't like them. And so if they come to me, they're going to buy or they're going to sell. And that was my job. My duty was to actually help them find it. And a lot of people don't understand what they want. So when you go looking for a car, you'll go, I want a black Mercedes-Benz with white leather interior, CD stacker, the whole lot. Where when you look for a property, you're actually just declaring, I want a 4-bedroom house with a double lock garage, or I want this sort of investment, or I need this sort of percentage return. And so I realised that there was a genuine need that you could help people, and that was the driver for me.
Yeah, because I think that is you touched on a good point there. People often don't go to see real estate agents because they want to. So it's a little bit different on my side of the fence, partly because of how I show up in the marketplace. A lot of people come to me because they want help, guidance, and advice, often outside the scope of what we offer as a service. But that's cool because they're sort of, they come with a different angle. But I guess you're right. A lot of people, you wouldn't walk into a real estate agency just because, you're passionate about it being there. But I think that does have a big weighting on, I guess, the reputation of sales agents as being commission focused and just chasing the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see there's any correlation between the types of real estate agents? Because you've been doing this for 28 years or something now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you see that there's any correlation between the success of real estate agents and their hunger for money or their desire to help? Do you see there's any correlation there? Have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I find that it's governed by their leader and the rules that they actually play. So there's some that are extremely ethical and want to do the right thing and have a moral compass and very community orientated and they drive very hard. There's some that just show that they're that way but aren't actually that way. And so I think there is a major difference. Some are driven by money, but they go through life cycles like people do. And there's sometimes, a desire or a need for the money, and then they go to a world of abundance. And then it's about the quality that they actually supply to their clients. And that's where I find the best agents start to peel out.
Yeah, totally. And again, it must be said, there's nothing wrong with wanting money, right? Like this is not a problem. I remember going for a job like in my early 20s, and I walked in there and they said, "Why do you want the job?" I said, "Well, I'm really passionate about making money. I currently don't have any, and I really need some. So on that basis, I'm going to show up and work really hard." And they went, "Fair enough. When can you start?" I was like, "Cool, let's go." And that was actually one of my biggest things, is that I could never find anywhere that would allow me to work enough hours. So I always worked 2-3 jobs, ran my own businesses, did all of that kind of stuff, because I was like, it's 24 hours in a day. Like, what are we only doing working 8? Now, again, a lot of people, that might rub them the wrong way as well. But for me, I mean, I've just got a passion to want to do more in life as well. So I can definitely relate to that. Now, you mentioned there just then that the impact that an agent has is directly correlated to their leader. What did you mean by that?
Look, I think I was lucky, after 2 years of working for another company, and there was nothing wrong with the people. It just, there was no leadership at all. The truth is, then I went with my father, and his ethics behind what he does on a daily basis was huge. Like he said that you were born with your word, and that's all you've ever got. And you can leave with your word, but that's your choice. And it stayed with me for a very long time. And I actually teach my team that as well, that if they're going to do something, they've got to do it 100% right, and they don't get a second chance at it. So caring for the client, not the money, is where you'll make it. Like what you're doing, the more input that you put into your clients, the more that you actually give them information, the more informed they are, the more successful they become. So that's, I think it stems from the leadership down. And if the leader's greedy, then everyone is.
Okay, so I couldn't agree more. And I think that's actually really a great thing I want to dig into, because now the people listening to this podcast, they typically sort of fall in 2 camps. They're either early stage investors, or there's probably a few different categories, I guess. Early stage investors, some more experienced investors, entrepreneurs, business owners, people thinking about investing, all of that kind of stuff. So I want to dig into a little bit about leadership. But so you started, so you've been doing this for like 28 years. Yep. You first started in competition with your dad, and then you went into business with your dad. Is that right?
Yeah. So after 2 years, I was selling quite well. He was actually, and he always had a fear of investing. And funnily enough, a real estate agent that feared taking a risk. But he'd been brought up with 3 jobs, a boilermaker. He was secretary manager of a lease club, and also a real estate agent. He does have insomnia, so he sleeps about 2 hours a day. But the guy's incredible, and so the being around people all his life, tradespeople, carpenters, all the stuff that come into the pubs and clubs and all the rest of it as well, gave him a real insight into what and him being a battler, the average person is looking for and how they want to do it. But it also gave him a big fear factor of risk. And once we started joining together and I started earning money, when I first started, it was wine, women and song that the money was going on, basically poker machines and gambling and all the other stuff that you do as a young fella. And then he said, look, you're going to have to get in and put your money into something that's valuable. So I bought a property. And then after the first 6 to 12 months, I realized that was pretty easy to do. And that was paid off pretty quickly with the volume that we were selling. So I decided that I'd actually go and buy another one. And they said, oh, no, you don't have to rush it, And I said to him, well, I want to rush it. I want to. Yeah. So I moved back home. I think that was probably his biggest fear. And I bought another one, and then did that the next year. I bought another one. And so the journey began.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's really cool. That's really good. So tell me a little bit about your investing journey then. So when did you start? How has that gone? We don't need to go into specifics. You don't need to expose your personal financial information here, but I'd be very interested to know, as someone who works in real estate, on the selling side of real estate,
yep,
how has that shaped your investing journey? Have you only invested in your local area? How many properties have you got? And have you focused on cash flow versus growth? Yep. Tell me a little bit about your portfolio.
Okay, so it started off very novice because, my guidance, what probably wasn't strong in the fact that we sold property all the time. We knew what was a good investment, but, I didn't have a mentor or a coach or anything like that. So after the first couple, I started at 18 and then bought the first one, then went from there, 18, 19, 20. I started to look and go, okay, well, this is pretty cool, but they were all negative gear to start off with. Because I didn't have any deposits and all the rest. And I was earning good money. I was just spending it. And then so I just started to look at it. And I had a person that come and join me in property management. She was in for 30 odd years, and she was an avid investor, 10, 15 properties. And So I started asking her what she would do, and she said, look, you really want to speak to a guy that talks about this positive gearing thing. And, at the time that was something that wasn't really too much around that people would talk about. But I went and had a chat to him, and I thought the guy was a loony. He talked about interest-only loans and all these things that scared the crap out of me. But then after a little bit, I realised that he had a lot of merit in it. And so what I decided to do was start a strategy that was twofold. One was that I had a little baby development company that would do duplexes and villas and things like that with one of my best mates. He was a builder. So I went down that line to start to build some equity that I could roll over and then buy some positive geared properties. The second was that I realised that I was paying a crap load of tax. So I started to deviate a little bit and had a positive geared mentality with my little cheapies that I'd buy around the town with good land value, and then I would buy a development site. And the idea was that the little cheapies would pay for the negativeness of the development site, and that would give me potential to grow and develop. And so, I've been doing that for years now, and started to diversify. And then I realised that my borrowing power was off my income, and it's slightly changing now where they're grouping it together. But so I realised that if I was earning $100,000, I could borrow $400,000. If I was at the time, that was the rule of thumb. And then if I had a company, it could borrow $400 as long as I didn't have borrowings on myself. So I just started opening up some companies, then got into trusts and started doing things differently. So it was just a suck it and see. And as I developed, I started buying a few, and now I've got a few good development sites that are poised to go, and I've got some great investment properties as well. And most of them are on the Central Coast, the northern end of the Central Coast. Because that's my area and that's where I see the confidence. I did delve into shares quite a bit and then realised that someone else controlled it. And when it went up, they made money. And when it went down, I lost money. And then they made money going back up again. So I started to go, well, that's not really the game for me. I want to play in the one that I know the best. And I've got a couple up north as well, but mostly here.
Awesome. So you started out negative gearing. That's how I guess most people have started out. The positive cash flow guy, who was that and where did he come from? Was he just a local guy or was he?
He was a blow-in, mate. He come out of the blue, and he was just a guy that did different investments and stuff like that. I used to listen to everyone. I'd sit down and I'd chat to everybody and try to pick the teeth out of it and see what was good and what wasn't. And it was way before his time. He was only a young fella. And the reason I didn't listen to him because he didn't have investments himself. He was just an advisor for a company, like a marketing company, just trying to pick up some
Interesting.
sales.
Yep.
Yeah, but it was funny because I'm a great believer in planting the seed, and he actually put the seed in my mind. So I started exploring other things, and interest-only loans were the first to catch my attention after that. And then after that, I thought, well, if he's got some merit in that, I might have to explore this positive stuff as well, and now work with the team with it.
Awesome. How did changing your strategy to positive cash flow? How did that? Because obviously, first, do you consider yourself now an investor or a developer?
Neither. An entrepreneur would probably be easier.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. We recently did an episode titled "The Rise of the Real Estate Entrepreneur," where we actually started to broach the difference between investors and real estate entrepreneurs. So I'm very interested that you just mentioned that because it ties in very much with the themology that we're going to be exploring over the next year, because I think there's a huge correlation between entrepreneurs and property. And in fact, some of my greatest entrepreneurial and business inspirations, people that I look up to, all have a real estate background, it's fascinating. There's a fascinating correlation there. So, mate, I like that. I'll take that. So, how did do you think you would have progressed from where you were to development, and do you think you would have been able to do that without focusing on positive cash flow?
Yes, but it would have been much more difficult. I think what it's done is it's allowed me to. I've been lucky that the northern end of the coast doesn't have any development specialists, commercial specialists, all the rest of it, because it was the forgotten end of the northern end of the coast. And so for me, the beauty was that when I was in real estate, I got to delve into the whole lot of it. And so, one of my first sales was actually a development site, which was a 50-lot subdivision. And so some people, some people were scared of it. I just thought, well, what the hell? Let's have a crack. And I did tell the owner. He was actually a father of one of my mates. And I said, I know nothing about this. And he said, well, Darin, I've had agents that have claimed they know everything about it and they've done nothing. So why don't you have a go? So,
that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. I think there is nothing more powerful than transparency and integrity. Like, I have never and will never pretend to be something that I'm not. Like, there are a lot of people out there who've got, 10, 20, 30 property portfolios. And all of that kind of stuff, and I'm like, man, that's awesome, but I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. Like we're at a level in our investing journey where we're making good headway, and we're able to help people on that journey too. And I'm pumped about that and stoked about it. So it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Nice. Yeah. Now, okay, so that's pretty cool. I want to partly because you self-identified as an entrepreneur, but also you are a leader within your organization.
Yep.
What does that mean firstly, how big is your organization? Like, how big is Wiseberry Heritage? Because Wiseberry is a much bigger brand. Heritage is the branch that you own.
Yep.
So how big is the business?
We've got 5 offices. 3 are sales and 2 are rentals. And so when I say that, we've got 2 offices two in Gorican. So one's a rental, one's a sales office. The rental office holds around 1,450 property managements, and the sales office, has been a gun for since 1994 when we started it. So it hasn't stopped. We've got a Charm Haven office, which is where I live behind. I've got an acreage behind it and a future development project. So that's really, really cool. And then I bought in, I actually had 8 at one stage, and I bought in with a couple of partners down in Tuppy and Berkeley Vale, where I held the majority share, but they were young. One was a young person coming through, one was a little bit more experienced. You could see he had a lot of talent, so I decided that I would work with them, and it would be like a non-competitive thing that you could start to bring people through. So one of my journeys is that I've earned enough from real estate, and I'm really happy with what I've actually done. But there's a lot of people that are loyal to me that have come on the journey, and so I want to actually work with them to rise their way. But I don't want them to be the competitors either. So we set a plan and strategy. They tell me what they want to achieve, and we're trying to achieve that for a few of them.
Awesome. So you're mentoring people to become their own leaders now.
Absolutely,
mate. 100%. That's awesome. That's awesome. So at what point now, when you started the business with your dad, at what point did leadership transition from your father to you, or was that set in stone from the ground? Did you say, look, I'll go into business with your dad, but I'm the boss? Or how did it work?
I certainly didn't do that way. No, look, he's the most respected person that I know. Like, he's incredible. And so I've got a lot of, he's up there as far as I'm concerned. And so it got to a part of the journey where, I was selling a lot. He was selling a lot. We were doing a great job, and the team just kept expanding. And he was a wonderful leader. And it got to a stage where it got to a point where I started doing sales management. Now, we hired a trainer and organisation, and it ended up being, been together. They're actually the owners of Wiseberry, and they were a training organisation first. And we went on a journey with them, and they did a lot of work on leadership. And as a sales manager, I was finding there were certain things that I needed the team to be able to do from a leadership point of view. So one day I went in and I said to Dad, let's swap roles. And Dad said, yeah, let's go for it. No worries at all. But then the guy who was the head of the training organisation come down and said, no, you move way too fast. Your dad's the leader. You're the sales manager. You keep doing it that way. So that worked for another year or so. And then Dad was getting a little bit frustrated with the industry, probably more staffing than anything, because, he was about giving everything that he possibly could. And some people were taking a lot. So he got to a point where one of our competitors offered to buy him out at really big dollars, and they wanted to tie me in for 5 years. And I said, look, if you're going to do that, why don't you let me buy at the same price? So at that stage, that was 2002. Me and my wife bought it off Mum and Dad. They decided to travel Australia and mentor from afar, and we've been running it ever since.
Awesome, mate. That's pretty cool. So what are the biggest lessons you've learnt about leadership and growing a business? Like, what are the biggest lessons you've learnt about leadership?
I think having a leadership coach is vital. So I've got a life coach and a leadership coach, and I think that's very, very important to have both. in the way your direction is, so you've got balance. I treat every person as if they're volunteers that work for me, and so they can walk out any day, any time. And by treating them that way, you have a respect for them that you don't hit the point where you blow up. And I'm not saying ever, but too often, where you don't get frustrated. You just know that they're great people. And I think give, and don't ever expect to get anything back. Loyalty is something that you've got to give, not actually expect back. And I think if you do that, then you'll go very, very well. So they're probably the tips.
Awesome. Good stuff. So the other thing that I wanted to ask is, as someone who has now grown a business, you've transitioned from mentee. You mentioned your dad was mentoring from afar.
Yep.
You currently have coaches, so you're still investing in your own professional development. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, mate. Like, I wake up at 5:30 every morning, and I'll do 2 hours worth of work before I actually start the day. Go for a walk with my wife. She's the one that actually gives me the balance and says, "Get back on this line," kicks me in the shins, and then I'm off to the day to start the day. So it's absolutely vital for anyone, I believe, running a business to be doing more work than their team to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So how have you managed to maintain that stamina? How have you managed to maintain that stamina? Because a lot of people think, oh, don't you burn out? Now, real estate agents typically work long hours. You've identified you work more hours than the people in your office. So I guess what habits, tactics, or strategies, we'll call them high performance tips, have you got as a business owner that have helped you maintain your performance over a long period of time?
I think goals is probably the biggest one. Making sure that you look at your goals. One of my lifestyle coach actually works very, very hard on those, and he makes me set goals for 25 years in advance, which is monstrous. I think how many times you read your goals is very, very vital. But just going through the exercise of actually trying to set so far in advance. Now, I can tell you, I may never get a deserted island with a helicopter and all the rest of the stuff that's there. It may not be possible, but if it's not set there, then you've got nothing to strive for. There's a lot of goals that I actually set that I look back in years to come and go, no, I'm going to shuffle that, or I'm going to delete that and add another one. But I think that's probably the most vital of all of them.
Mate, I am so impressed that you've mentioned that. One of the big things that I have done, and with my partner Gabby, but also one of the things that I've written about in my book, one of the things that we coach people on, talk about all this stuff, is the idea of having a 25-to-1 life plan. Now, the 25-to-1 life plan is about creating 25-year goals that you can then break down into stages so that you end up with 90-day steps, and every 90 days is 1% of your journey on the way to 25 years. And that allows you to focus on taking incremental steps rather than enormous ones. I'm really impressed that you mentioned that, because
thank you.
I don't know that many other people that set 25-year goal plans.
Yeah, look, he's got a book called Black Belt of the Mind, and it's very, Dr. Fred Gross, his name is. He's very, very clever. He's not the cheapest coach in the world, but I tell you what, he certainly keeps your mind focused very, very well. And I found a common denominator with all the top principals when I used to meet with them. They all used to mention his name. I used to think, well, I've got to give this guy a call and suss him out. And, he's been a rabbi, and he's 88 years old, but he's a very clever man. And to be honest with you, he just has the right thing to say at the right time. And I think that's just experience,
Yeah, 100%. And I from a personal level, like, I have invested personally hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past few years in increasing my education, knowledge, understanding, coaches, mentors, courses, anything that I can do to try and fine tune and dial in the way that I think about all of this stuff. So I think it's fantastic that you're still investing in that. And I think it's something that everyone should take on board, that if you don't have a mentor or a coach or someone who can help shine that light on how to optimize your life, and if you're literally just trying to learn by trial and error, that you're actually selling yourself short. You're not living to your full potential.
Also, too, they're very, very good guide sticks of when things actually do go wrong. Sometimes you actually hit the panic button. What people have done through this period, and other people look at it as opportunity. And I've got to say that it just put a grin on my face, because whilst I understand the tragedy side of it, I also looked at the entrepreneurial side of it. And when the taxi driver says to buy, that's the time to sell. And when the taxi driver says to sell, then that's the time to buy, and everyone was talking doom and gloom, and all I could see was opportunity.
Mate, that's a great segue into something I really wanted to approach with yourself, is about the current environment and how to navigate that. So for context, if someone is listening to this in the future, in a couple of years' time, at the moment, obviously we're experiencing an economic downturn due to the coronavirus pandemic. It's affecting everyone in the world. I want to just attack that ideology for a little minute though, because it's very easy to take Warren Buffett's quote of be fearful when everyone else is greedy and be greedy when everyone else is fearful.
Yep.
But I actually believe that can allow people to make really, really bad decisions. If that is your litmus test, if it's like, okay, well, everyone else thinks it's bad, I'll go buy, and everyone thinks it's good, I'll go sell. Right? If that is your litmus test, that doesn't carry enough weight with it. In any case, I don't think. So
agreed.
There's got to be more to it, which is why I'm so passionate about research. And not everywhere is going well. I mean, the research that we have done independently with other organizations, et cetera, shows that currently there are areas which are significantly impacted. Whether you look at the statistical sales data or whether you look at the valuer information, you get two different stories. But there are areas which are significantly impacted, but there are areas which are actually growing in spite of, or perhaps because of, the current environment. So how have you personally navigated this environment, and what advice would you have to anybody else looking to buy or sell in the current market?
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, and there's a whole gamut of questions there, but to start with, we've been doing very, very well. The number that I produced was 32. It actually had come back. They'd only exchanged on 30 with 2 that had been moved over to the following month. So we did 30 sales in the month, look, that's a really good result. We're normally 40 to 50, so it's down a little. But after the first 2 weeks, and investors not knowing whether they're going to get rent or not, I thought that was pretty impressive, to be honest. And the way we did it was we actually got our team together and we said, look, let's concentrate on what the variables are that we can control. Who is buying pre-COVID? Who is buying during COVID? Who is buying after COVID? And who is not buying for another 12 to 18 months? And let's put them in some categories. Let's have a look and let's look at exactly what they want and what they need. And then let's start to work from there. And so we did that. We then started to realize there was a real thirst and a hunger for properties on the coast. The investors for the first 2 weeks of the month were just non-existent, and that's a staple diet of ours. But there was a lot of movement within and a lot of movement from Sydney that were always intending to buy on the coast. So they decided to buy on the coast. So lifestyle properties, waterfronts, acreages, bigger blocks, new estates. So they become very, very popular. So we've seen no market price change. Now, let me precursor this because other agents are talking it down by 10, 15, 20%. What out of the 32 sales that I'd worked on before coming onto air here, I'd worked out that 1 had sold under the odds and 5 had sold at 5% above the odds, and the rest were market price, or what we perceived to be market price, which is in a small category of 5%. So I've got to be perfectly transparent. Our market hasn't seen it. I had a valuer on the phone. He said, the market's crapped itself, Darin. It's gone down by 15%. And I said, where do you get the figures from? Because I haven't seen any of those figures yet. And he said, well, the banks are telling us that. I've only had 3 valuations to do in the last 2 weeks, so it must be bad. And I said, well, mate, and this was on I think the 13th day, and we'd sold 14 properties. And I said, well, we've sold 14 already. So if you haven't got the work, it's not because the work's not there. It's because it's probably chugged into the bank line where they're getting phone calls about, deferrals and all the rest of it. But I'm telling you, the sales are actually there. And I said to him, out of the 3 that you actually did, can you tell me, are any of them below market price? And he said, no, there's none of them. And I said, well, how are you saying there's a 15% downturn? And he said, well, that's just what we're predicting. And I said, yeah, but valuation's got to go off the market. It can't go off what it's predicting the future to be.
No, it's not designed to be an opinion piece. Everyone's,
that's right.
Opinions are like arseholes. Valuers are not there to be thinking, oh, well, this is what it might do. It's to take a very practical and pragmatic view on what it is. And I think this is one of the things that's been really getting my goat as well, is this view of all of these fortune tellers going, but we think it might do this, therefore we will state that the fact currently is this. And it's like, well, where is that information coming from?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I said to him, mate, can I just ask a question? Do you live on your own? And he said, yeah. And I said, who are you talking to? Who's your business coach? Who's your mentors? And he goes, I don't have any. I said, do you speak to your boss? Nah, he's too busy at the moment. I said, no wonder. You're sitting there watching the television. I remember going back many years ago when the Greek economy was crapping itself, and the shop next door to our real estate shop was a chicken shop. And I'd go in there, and every day something different would happen. They were taking the fish and chips that were in the chicken shop out. Then they'd take the salads out and they'd put them in the back cool room. Then the lights went off. TV always stayed on the Greek news. And then all of a sudden the chickens disappeared from the front of the shop, so they had nothing on display. I said to them, what are you doing? And they said, the economy's dead. And I said, I don't know how you're saying that, because we are booming next door. We're selling properties like they're going out of fashion, and so I think a lot of people are distorted by what they listen to. And, I actually heard a thing the other day, and I thought it was really, really apt. In the first 5 minutes of watching the news, you'll know everything that's going to happen on the news in the clips, and the rest of it is all just hyping it up from there on in. And I think that's so true. So.
I couldn't agree more. It's an absolute cesspool, but it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing for people to find reliable information, because more and more the reliable sources of information are succumbing to economic pressures and are becoming tabloidal. So the organizations and the outlets that you used to be able to, I think, more reasonably lean into, even with a healthy degree of skepticism, are no longer carrying that degree of journalistic credibility, which makes it very, very difficult to decipher fact from fiction, basically.
Yeah. Too true. And what people do traditionally is they judge themselves on their actions, and they judge someone else. On their intentions. They judge someone else on their actions. And so basically what we're seeing in the marketplace is that people are coming to us and saying, here is one sale that's out of line. And we go, here is 10 that aren't. And look, I think that's the reason the agents in the early pieces feared the buyer's agent so much, because they're expecting the buyer's agent to come to them with these stats and saying, here's the market price. I want my best deal for my client. And that's not necessarily how buyer's agents work. What they're looking for is the best property for their clients. Not necessarily, it doesn't, and look, I learned this from a guy many years ago, very successful man. He said, Darin, it doesn't matter what you pay for a property. Even paying a premium will get your premium. If you buy a discounted property, you generally will sell a discounted property. So it was the mindset of what he put me in. And so now I don't mind buying a great property and paying a premium price for it, even as a real estate agent, as long as that property gets me a premium when I sell it. And generally they do.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of caveats there, of course. But one of the big things that we talk about is the ability to add value. So you can buy. Now, I agree with you that you need to detach from what is the best deal, because that can mean so many things. I have people come to me and go, oh, look, we only want to use you as a buyer's agent if you can get us 20% below market value. And I'm like,
that's crazy.
Well, cool. I can catch you later. Not to say that you can't do that. And in fact, we have done stuff like that in the past, but you've got to understand how it actually fits within an overarching strategy, and also why it is below market value. What are the key levers? What is the thing? Because as you say, if you just took one property that was under market value and then did nothing and then sold it again a while later, you're probably going to find that you're going to be selling it at a discount as well. So adding value is a different component, and that'll obviously lend into some of the skills that you've got as a developer, but it can be anything from cosmetic renovation or whatever. The really underlying thing, I think, is that people need to buy the value proposition that is in line with their strategy.
That's right.
And that is the biggest thing. Because you can pay above market value for a property if the strategy with it is that in 5 years you're going to subdivide it into 5 lots and sell or whatever. if that is making sense, if that's the thing that makes sense. So I think people need to detach from price and focus on value, because price is what you pay, value is what you get, right?
Absolutely.
So I agree with that wholeheartedly. So what is your perspective then, given that we're like a few weeks into this whole saga now? How do you think it's going to shape up over the next, say, 6 months? Do you think we've just got a delayed and protracted downturn? Do you think that Central Coast is never going to be impacted? What is your opinion on that? Central Coast,
normally, if Sydney gets a sneeze, we get the flu. So our prices, if they have a downturn, we plummet. But we also do the opposite when it actually starts turning up. The northern end of the coast is an interesting one. You can't go further north and get it cheaper. You can't go south and get it cheaper. You can't go east because there's the water, and you can't go west because it's dearer as well. So it's a really, really interesting area. You can go the other side of Newcastle, of course, and we've got an office at Darin that's very affordable and very good returns. But on the actual coast itself, there is nowhere. So there's really good pockets there. And what we've seen is this, that there's value. I mean, if you're borrowing at 2.5%, 3%, depending on what people are actually negotiating at the moment, and I'll leave that to you and your viewers. But the truth is that if you can do that and you're picking up 4s, 4.5s, if it's something's a dual lock or something like a granny flat or whatever the case, that you add some value to a property, then you can be picking up maybe 4.5 to 5%. There's money for jam, and you might as well take it. So for me, and where we see it, I can see a real movement forward with the market. Now, there's a double theory that's been thrown at me, and I work with a lot of smart people, smarter than me, and so I watch what they're talking about. One believes there's a V, so they believe that there is we're at one point of the V, and it will go down but come back up very, very quickly due to lending constraints. So the banks will play a part in that. The other is the fact that if we haven't moved in the first 6 weeks of COVID, and we've had isolations and restrictions and deferrals and all the other stuff, well, is it going to really change? If it can't be dented by that, then how is it going to be? So the way I say it to my owners is quite simple, and this is from a selling strategy, is that if 10% believe the market may increase and 90% believe the market may decrease, then the best advice for me to give them is to auction the property at the moment, take it to the market and see what the market's actually dictating. Now, from a buying strategy, I'm actually, my son just bought a property and I was jumping in bells and whistles and saying to him, mate, make it happen no matter. He's locked in, first home buyer, 2.29%, fixed for 2 years, which is fantastic. He bought the property for $465, no stamp duties because of what's happening. And I'll touch base with you about the state government about what they're talking about there. That's an interesting one, that one too. But and then he could rent that property in 2 sections. It's got a little granny flat below it. It's got two bedrooms above it. As it stands at the moment, he's probably looking at around about $500, $550 a week return on it. What a gem! And it's a dual lock block, or you can whack a granny flat on it as well. So
awesome. Sounds like a great deal.
They're there, and it wasn't cheap. Like everyone else is saying to me, well, sit back and wait till it's 420 because the market will drop. And I said, no, we're doing it now because what I believe is the interest rates is that even though they're really attractive, they've talked about them going further and all the rest of it, they're giving money away at the moment. It's ridiculous. It is free money, basically. And I think you've got to take advantage of it.
Well, I could agree more. The amount of times I get people asking me like, oh, should I wait another couple of months just in case the interest rates go down a little bit? And
well, buy one then and buy one now.
I'm like, well, what do you like? Are they not good enough? Like, is this not good enough for you? Is 0.5% going to dictate your entire buying strategy? Because if so, I would question that maybe you need to have a more robust strategy. If that's the single thing that's going to make it or break it.
Absolutely.
Now, I know people who are waiting for it to go negative before they buy, and I'm like, okay, that's okay. Interesting strategy. Yep. Yeah, you touched on it very briefly, and I'm mindful of time, so I want to tackle this, and then I want to wind things up a little bit.
Yeah, good.
So, land tax, stamp duty, all this kind of stuff. There's talk at the moment of the government axing stamp duty in New South Wales. How do you think that is going to affect property prices? But let's start there. How do you think that's going to affect property prices? What do you think is going to happen with that?
Your viewers aren't probably going to like this, but I don't want it to happen. And there's a reason I don't want it to happen, because it's going to start a boom that's too quick. It's going to accelerate it so quickly that there'll be the other side comes too quick. I like it nice and steady. I like a market that rises gently because it stays in for a long time. And if we've got a 5 to 7 year rise, then that's just brilliant for us as investors or entrepreneurs. If it happens quickly, it generally finishes quickly. And so my theory is that me personally, I don't want it to take place, even though I can see the short-term gain from it. I'm looking longer term and thinking that'll have a more detrimental effect to the investors. But to be perfectly honest, it will boom if they take it off, and you'd be crazy not to get in straight away if that's the case.
Yeah, interesting, because there's an argument to say that some people might want to wait and not pay. Wait and see. I like to call these people the fortune tellers. And there's a saying that I love, that he who lives by the crystal ball is destined to eat ground glass. And there's a lot of these fortune tellers out there at the moment. Oh, maybe in a month, in 2 months, I don't know, the market might crash, and I don't know, the tax might be repealed, or these other things might happen, which I just think is absolutely hilarious. But because we don't know what's going to happen. So,
yep.
But I think, in my opinion on the whole scenario, is I don't think the government's prepared to give away money for free.
No.
And I agree with you that a sugar rush boom is nothing to be desired. Whenever you see these big, steep, like artificially stimulated booms, like you see in mining towns and stuff like that, it never ends well. It ends in tears. So I'm with you. I want to see consistent, reliable. I want to be able to. Part of our strategy is that I find the best opportunities to get the steepest price growth over the shortest period of time. So we are looking for those gentrifying areas, those areas that are changing, the areas that are in transition from low to a mid to upper, or that have diversified their economy and got good stimulus. And we want to capture that rise, because you do find that.
Yep.
But that has to be supported by a long-term view that those prices are going to be stable and not crash again on the back end, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree.
But in saying that, though, if the investor, and this is what it showed me over 10, 20, 30 years, people go in there and they buy a property, and if they're looking as a longer picture, which is how an investor should look, that's when you make the true money. It's not made in the first cycle, it's made in the second or the third. And you generally get to the second cycle and people are calling you lucky. The third one, they're calling you visionary or entrepreneurial. And so what I'm saying to people is, this is only part of a strategy of a long picture. And if they're thinking longer term, they will make money. And I'm not a financial planner. I can't give advice about it and all this. I can only go off what I'm actually personally doing. But I can tell you, when I bought, half a dozen properties at $80,000 or $90,000, and they might be $500,000 now, that's not a bad strategy.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a really funny thing that a lot of people get concerned about risk, and they're really worried about risk. Now, as a business owner and another business owner, the risk in business is tremendous. 97% failure rate in business, and so, even with stocks and shares, that's investing in business. So you may invest in Tesla, and then, Elon Musk might send out a tweet like he did the other day and crash the prices, right? You got all these kind of areas. The funny thing about real estate is, if you buy, using solid fundamentals, there is a 100% success rate given enough time. Now, don't get me wrong, if you bought somewhere way in the middle of nowhere with no solid fundamentals and the town dies and all of that kind of stuff, that's a different story. But if you follow some basic principles around how to find a good area, there's a 100% success rate over time. I think
true.
A lot of people get concerned of, like, what if it goes down by 5% this year? And I'm like, yep.
I'll give you an adage of an old business coach, and he was a really, like, this guy, and I'd never take his advice in dress clothing, because he used to wear a rope around his belt. He was a miser. He didn't like spending money. But he actually said, Darin, you buy, you never sell. And I said to him, listen, mate, then I would be in debt up to my eyeballs. And he said, 100 kilos of rocks and 100 kilos of feathers are exactly the same, just so you know. And he said, as long as you can service your debt, or as long as you're positive geared, or whatever the case may be, look into the future. And he said, what you see, and that time, that was the late 80s, early 90s. And he said, what you see as $1 million worth of debt as being something that's scary will be $10 million in 30 years' time, will be $100 million in 60 years' time. And I can tell you right now, people will be saying that you're crazy, you didn't buy all you could. And if you talk to anyone that's older, that's lived the times, they go, gee, I should have bought that development, or I should have bought that acreage, or I should have bought that house, or I should have kept that home. I think it's one of those strategies where if you listen to the wisdom of some older people, they'll tell you that they have never thought they'd ever see the day where something would be worth 500,000. And we're talking millions now.
100%. I've just been reading Richest Man in Babylon again, and
great book.
It's a great book. It lends heavily into that. Having an action bias, you encourage luck and opportunity to knock at your door when you have an action bias, basically. So
fantastic.
Nice, mate. Well, mate, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Actually, I'm really glad. We've gone in a lot of really cool and fun and interesting and exciting directions. It's been quite stimulating, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you have too. So, have you got any final advice to people who are thinking about buying at the moment? And also, how can people get in touch with you if they are thinking about buying in the Central Coast?
Yep, okay. No, look, I'm sure they can come through you. There's not a problem in the world. We'd be happy to work together. I think it probably falls back to something that I'd heard a long time ago, and that was that as a poor man thinks about their next alcoholic drink, they're thinking in seconds. A rich man actually thinks, and a billionaire thinks about their goals, 36 times a day. And I think the long thing is that it's the action that I see that people take that makes a big, big difference. Plan a long way ahead. And if you think of something, take the action, because the difference between, say, me and another person that does it, that earns similar sort of money or whatever, is just that if I see an opportunity, I'll take it. And most people don't. And so, look, my name's Darin Butcher. I'm from Wiseberry Heritage Real Estate. You can contact me either in our Gorican office, Charmaven office. My mobile number is 0414 920 949. Facebook me, Insta, any of those things. I'm happy to respond.
Mate, you just gave out your phone number on a podcast which gets circulated pretty widely. Like, that's ambitious. You could get all kinds of people ringing you. Crikey.
I'm up all day and night, mate. They can call me anytime they like.
Nice. I like that last little piece there. Plan with a long sword, fight with the short sword. So I like that. Cool, mate. Well, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I look forward to having another conversation with you again in the future. And mate, take care and all the best.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time too. Appreciate it heaps.
Cheers, mate. Speak soon.